What is up, guys? I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we are tackling some r/ProRevenge. If you do enjoy the content, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too. And a huge thank you to the members of this channel. You are truly appreciated. And we have a new member, Reverter King. Thank you very much for joining us. And with that being said, let's get on with today's stories. Much love, guys. Today I found one of the classic ProRevenge stories. I hope you haven't heard this one yet. It is from Greyspot00 titled, Downstairs Neighbours Wouldn't Turn Down Music. Nuked Them from Orbit. Was suggested to cross-post from r/malicious compliance. I was inspired by a recent post to tell my own bad neighbour story. Can't think of a better place to post it. Flashback to 2014 or so. I moved out on my own in 2013 and moved into an old house converted into a 2-floor apartment directly across my future in-laws. The downstairs neighbours were loud, blaring music at all hours. Yes, all of the hours. Wouldn't cut the grass or take out the trash on our shared schedule. Crappy neighbours, but never bothered me directly. The guy was pretty chill when sober and would turn the music down a little when I texted him. He was okay until his girlfriend moved in. Now add shouting matches to the mix, and all of a sudden my request to turn down the music makes him turn it up. I can barely walk on my super thin floor without her banging on the ceiling with a broom. I was okay since I'm a heavy sleeper and can sleep through anything. My wife moved in and I quickly found out that she is quite the opposite. Fan turned on at a certain angle in the doorway of the bathroom, door closed halfway, blackout curtains with them taped to the wall so zero light comes through, zero sounds other than the fan. You get the idea. I told her that we can't expect them to remain silent when she's ready for bed. We need to be reasonable. But the wall rattling music needs to stop during the night. She hated it during the day, but I told her there's nothing we can do then, so she would go to her parents' house a lot during the day. I talked to the neighbour guy. He said, yeah man, that's cool. But it turns out the girlfriend wasn't having it, and his attitude then changed to, yeah well it's our house, so you can go F yourself if you think you can tell us what to do, and you can move out if you don't like it. Something definitely had to change once she was pregnant, and then the baby came. So I did the only thing I could do. I fought fire with fire, and maliciously complied with the law to the T. I could only report them for noise after 11 PM. I now forget the morning hour when the noise could start, but I believe it was 9 AM. My dad has these huge old concert speakers in his garage, professional grade, black leather bound, 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and pretty nice, vintage stereo/amp. He has 2, but my apartment was so small I sadly only had room for 1. We replaced our coffee table with this thing, laid face down on our thin office carpet. Tired of his crap tunes, I tested this Geneva Convention breaking device when they weren't home. Holy cow. I had to take everything down from tables, counters and shelves because they would shake off. I prepared audio files to feed the stereo. I was giddy like a kid with a new Christmas toy. I turned it on when I left for work and got my wife up to send her to her parents. I came home from work and hung out at her parents until it was close to bedtime. They resisted for 3 days. On day 2, I found a pile of manure on my doorstep, but it didn't faze me. I cycled between signed, saw and square waves in clashing chords, marching music, Washington Post march on loop, preaching clips. They weren't just atheist but outspoken anti-Christian, so it was a must. The most stupid songs you could ever think of, Captain Planet theme song, chicken dance, etc. This poor old house rattled in ways I don't think possible. The vibrations from the sine wave would make your vision blur. I eventually got a text from him that said, sorry man, you can stop now. I did not. He needed a few more days to let it sink in. Plus I had so much fun putting it together. They complained to the police and the landlord. There was nothing they could do since I wasn't doing anything wrong. I didn't even hear music during the time of peace to follow. It was so quiet. They would build up their courage and try again every few weeks when I wasn't home, but my wife was. I then showed her how to tame the beast so she could let loose while I was away. I had to give them a spanking every now and then, but they learned. They were so happy when we moved out. Oh, that is so good. Especially using like preaching clips as well. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. That is an amazing way to get back some revenge. How about you guys? Did you enjoy that revenge? Let me know in the comments below. Our next story is from Revenge Throwaway. I got back at my childhood bullies by destroying an entire town. Pardon for my English as it isn't my first language. I was browsing r/ask Reddit and came across a thread about whatever happened to that trenchcoat kid at your school. I was that trenchcoat kid, and I came back into town and destroyed it years ago. As a background, I grew up in a conservative little town, in a conservative rural area, heavily dominated by religion. This makes people put great stock on moral purity and appearances. Keeping up the facade is the most important thing. Everyone must go to church weekly, and people are heavily judged for appearing sinful. This was a bad thing for me, as the cards were heavily stacked against me from birth. You see, I'm a rape baby. My mother lost her parents when she was young and was taken in by her uncle and aunt. The uncle had an important position in the local religious hierarchy, so when he and a couple of his friends started sexually abusing my mum, it was ignored by everyone. When she got pregnant, it was painted as showing that she's a harlot running around seducing married men. She was cast out. Why she didn't move out of town, I don't know, but yeah. Then I came into the picture, born out of wedlock and with no father, branded as a sinful outcast. My childhood was shit. I don't go into details, but enough to say that by the time I started going to school, I was quite damaged. School made it worse. I was bullied relentlessly. Teachers were a part of it, since they were all part of the religious community, which saw me as stained. Imagine being the only black kid in town run by KKK, and you get to how close it was. So yeah, in school I became a trenchcoat kid, or its local cultural equivalent. I became weird and hostile on purpose to turn people off. People were casting me into the mould of being damaged and stained, so yeah, I took it and turned it into something to protect myself with. Despite all this opposition, I managed to graduate with decent grades. A distant aunt, my only decent relative, helped me get into college in an actual city. She was the black sheep of the family and saw herself in me, maybe. Around this time my mother drank herself to death. I can't blame her for it. She had a life insurance policy that helped me study. City life liberated me. I went into therapy and managed to treat the wounds that the town had sliced into me. I got rid of that shitty town, but I guess some part of it never left me. Years went by, I became sort of an analytical consultant. I work for an international company that does sort of out-of-the-box analysis for other companies. I won't go into details to protect my identity, but we assist in solving all kinds of situations. Well, in my line of work, I'm sometimes called in to help downsizing operations. This sucks. I feel for the people who get fired, but if I wouldn't do it, someone else would. A couple of years ago, I got an assignment to go into 3 different factories and assess them wholesale, then come with a suggestion on which of them to move abroad. My hometown was among those 3 factories. You see, the shitty town I grew up in was one of those one smokestack towns, like we say in my country. There was one factory and some agriculture. Everyone worked in those jobs, like 60% of the people in the factory. Rest of the economy rolled around supporting the factory and the people working there. Most of the people looked forward at nothing but a job at the factory after getting out of school. The religious community running the town ran the factory as well. The big shots in the community tended to be the bosses in the factory. This meant that the factory wasn't run that well. Promotions were based on holiness, not merit or skill. The trip back to the hometown was glorious. Most people didn't recognise me at first. The chubby outcast had become outwards just another corporate drone. I inspected all the paperwork, listened to their speeches and lies, audited the processes. In the process I dropped hints and finally they got who I was. The factory people threw a party for me for old time's sake. Many of my old school buddies were there. We remembered fake good times together. I threw shadow on every part by pulling up some certain event of bullying I had endured, just to see the atmosphere turn awkward. Then I laughed at it like it was always a joke and I had grown out of it. Inside I was seething with hatred and enjoyed this all. I really loved seeing their faces, seeing what they had become, because fuck it, I was going to take it all away from them. In the end they seemed relieved, believing that they were lucky it was me doing the audit, that the hometown boy would protect them. After my visit, lasting a couple of days, was over, I cruised around the town in my rented car, just to see how people lived and to remember what it was like. My state of mind was something close to sexual arousal. I'd never understood why people pursue positions of power, but yeah, now I understood. The rest, as they say, is history. I wrote a really scathing report documenting every little flaw and mistake ever done in the town plant. I didn't need to lie or fabricate. I simply took things that existed and polished them till they looked even worse than they were. The factory was shut down in the following 3 years. The town died. No business venture ever came to replace it. Drug use and alcohol use spiked, as did crime and domestic violence. Lives fell apart, families fell apart, they still haven't recovered, save for a few brighter souls who moved away. I still stalk them on social media sometimes, enjoying how shitty their lives are, how they finally got to pay for what they did to me and my mum. I don't feel a slight bit of remorse. If I could do it all again, I would. Only I'd first make it so I could be present to watch when they receive the news about the factory being shut down. Hell, in my fantasy version of the events, I'll stay in the town for a year just to see everyone fall apart. In reality, I would go back there once, when my uncle finally dies. I'm going to go and piss on his grave. Jesus Christ. This sounds like it could be quite a good movie. I love a bit of bully revenge, me. And I would love to watch a movie about that. If what did happen to this guy, you can't actually blame him. Obviously, there's going to be some innocent people in the middle of all this, but, you know, he got his revenge. What do you guys make of this story? Let me know in the comments below. Our next story is from Harry Monk. Oh, God. Mike finds a way to get rid of problem employee. The revenge wasn't mine, but I figured I'd share as I was a witness to the beginning. Certain names and details changed to protect the guilty. Background: years back I worked for a large bank in the UK. We all worked on the same floor and in the same department, but within different teams. I was just passing through on the secondment and saw the beginning of this revenge, but was filled in on the aftermath later. One of the teams was run by a woman called Sarah. Sarah was by many measures a good manager, but she had a blind spot. That blind spot was a woman called Helen. Now, when I was in my previous role, I interacted with Helen a fair bit, and she had seemed friendly, but when it came to actually working with her, she was a nightmare. She'd tattle, steal ideas and credit, and generally throw you under the bus at any opportunity. I'm not sure why Sarah always protected her, but it soon became a sore point for most people on the floor who had to deal with her. Enter Mike, who was the manager of a smaller team. Mike could be a bit of a dick, but was still professional and fun to work with. To give you an idea of his character, I found out I was being made redundant, and even though he wasn't my manager, he heard about it and booked time out to help me with my CV and do interview practice. Shortly after, it was announced that Mike's smaller team was being dissolved and the staff either made redundant or moved to other teams. At the time of the cuts, the economy in the UK was in a bad state and all banks were looking for efficiencies. He was redeployed and took the vacant manager role under Sarah that Helen had been gunning for. To make matters worse, Helen now reported directly to him. Helen was furious and spent no time in making her discontent known, as she felt she was entitled to the promotion. Unfortunately for her, Mike was wise to her. They'd both joined the company around the same time, and so he knew exactly what she was like. He'd even had her blame him for her mistakes before. Shit, even the project she had gotten so much praise for had been work one of his staff had done. So he started the process of documenting her poor work and attitude to manage her out of the business. Sarah, however, would not allow it. Helen was a high performer in her eyes, and she wouldn't sign off on him getting rid of her. When I left the team, Mike was frustrated with her and wasn't sure what to do. The revenge. I met up with Mike a year later, and he shared how he'd solved the Helen problem with me because he knew all the issues I had with her. Because Sarah had his hands tied, his only other option to get Helen out of the team was for her to leave on her own accord. He couldn't just oust her by making her life difficult, or she'd go to Sarah. So he went the other way. The motherfucker sat through every performance meeting with her for the rest of the year, gritting his teeth and praising her. That then justified him giving her a really high performance rating. He also used his own contacts to find roles in other teams at his grade that he then talked up to Helen. These roles were specifically selected because they were specialised in one thing Helen claimed she was an expert at, but had very little experience in. Basically roles where he knew she'd have the highest chance of shitting the bed. Eventually she applied for one, and he spent several weeks coaching her for the interview. In the company at the time, the interviews were scored off three main factors: performance rating in current role, competency-based interview results, and relevant experience. He did everything he could to make her shine in all three. She took the promotion, and within 2 months had quit the bank. He knew she wasn't ready for the responsibility, didn't have the skills, and her poor work ethic would be exposed. Worst case, she'd get her shit together and he'd look like the perfect manager to Sarah. My only concern would be there, like, because he basically got her promoted, wouldn't it look bad on Mike to the people that actually had the interview with her? Because obviously he's been bigging her up the whole time, and if she does shit afterwards, surely it'd come back on Mike in the end. But I don't know, clearly not. I like the way that you just totally reversed it though, and made her so confident in herself that she fucked herself over. The best way, I think. What do you guys make of the story? Let me know in the comments below. And once again guys, if you did enjoy this content, there's another video on your screen right now. If you click that, it will tell YouTube you like my content. Really helpful, let me just tell you right now. And thank you for being here. The time out of your day is truly, truly appreciated. And I will see you in the next one. Much love now.